I'll admit this has been one of the hardest relationships I've been in. I still very much love her. She's beautiful, strong, driven, successful, and independent. However, my 30-year-old girlfriend, who is 28, is a dismissive avoidant to the extreme, and it's been causing a lot of issues in our relationship. She's in therapy, but that is mostly focused on managing her obsessive-compulsive disorder and related eating disorder. Fun fact, all three issues are often comorbid. She has issues expressing her emotions and needs and struggles with communication, commitment, and compromise as a result. We've been dating a little over a year. Prior to me, her longest relationship was less than 2 months. She usually shuts down and runs from relationships if she feels smothered, if her partner lets her down, or if she feels like she's being criticized. It doesn't take much for this to happen. She does recognize this, and she's trying to work on it. But it's hard on both of us. Both of us are big theater nerds. A few months ago, we had a trip to a city about 2 hours from us to visit her grandparents, and I got to meet her best friends from college for the first time. While there, we went to a show with her friends. I honestly had a great time. Her grandparents love me, and I got along really well with her friends. There was another show coming up in a few months that both of us have connections to. It was the first musical she ever saw with her grandparents, and I worked on a production in high school. I asked my girlfriend if we could go. I even offered to bring her grandparents and treat them to a nice night out, since they don't get to go out much anymore, or we could go with her college friends. I immediately got shut down. She said that she didn't really like that show, which she has mentioned before, and she didn't want to see it again. Fine, no big deal. That show was last weekend. We kinda had a fight on Saturday. I was about 15 minutes late picking her up to hang out at a brewery, and she felt really let down. She's broken up with other people for similar reasons and gave the silent treatment all day. Eventually, I got her to open up. We apologized to each other and had a decent evening at home. The next morning, she said that she didn't feel great and wanted to go home to rest. I drove her home and asked if she needed me to stay with her to take care of her or anything. Nope, she just wanted a quiet day to herself. I told her to let me know if she needed anything and headed home. I didn't hear from her all day. Even when she's relaxing, we're usually trading memes and Snapchats of our cats, but she's not even opening my messages. Earlier that week, she had a migraine so bad that I needed to take her to the emergency room, and her sister just had a baby that's been having some health problems. I started to get really worried that something was wrong by late afternoon, so I decided to check her location on Find My. She's not at home. She's not even in our city. She's just leaving a restaurant and walking to the theater to go see the show that I really wanted to see. I assumed she was with her friends again. The restaurant is a favorite of theirs. It's a nicer restaurant where they would have needed a reservation, and the show is a popular one. Everything would have needed to have been planned well in advance. I'm not worried about her cheating or anything. Her friends are married to each other, and she wouldn't be going with anyone else except maybe her grandparents. I'm just so hurt over everything. I really wouldn't have minded if she said she already had plans to go to the show with her friends. I just don't understand why she lied to me about not being willing to go, and why she lied to me to hide that she was going. I think she just didn't want to explain that she wanted to go with her friends and without me. I don't know how to bring this up to her. She's very sensitive to criticism. Even though I'm hurt and not mad at her, she'll probably take it as an attack. She also just doesn't really like me expressing my feelings to her in general and tends to shut down and withdraw. I'm worried that if I bring this up, she'll just break up and leave to avoid the conversation. She's threatened to do that before on much smaller issues. How can I bring this up without scaring her off? TLDR, my girlfriend told me she didn't want to go to a show I wanted to see, then lied about what she was doing and went without me. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I don't know how to bring this up to her. She's very sensitive to criticism, and even though I'm hurt, not mad at her, she'll probably take it as an attack. She also just doesn't really like me expressing my feelings to her in general and tends to shut down and withdraw. Imagine living the rest of your life where your feelings and thoughts about situations are met with hostility. This is where you are headed in this relationship. It screams narcissism, and trust me, you will regret it if you continue. This isn't something you can fix. If she is already being dishonest, it's probably time to let her work on herself, by herself. Comment 2. Exactly how is this relationship really working out? It seems you have to walk on those proverbial eggshells all the time. What are her redeeming qualities that you find admirable? She is too sensitive, threatens to leave, is avoidant, withdraws, gives the silent treatment, is not expressive with her feelings, and doesn't like you expressing yours, is dishonest, has obsessive-compulsive disorder, etc. Beautiful, successful, and independent are what she offers. Please re-examine what is important to you in a healthy, loving partnership. Ask yourself if you are getting your needs met and if you and your girlfriend really share the same values and life goals. Now, for the update. It's been about 2 days since the argument, and I haven't heard anything from Olivia. Like, total silence over here. I texted her asking how she was doing, but guess what? No response. Typical. So I decided to give her some space, but honestly, it felt really off. Something was up. My sister, trying to cheer me up, invited me to a family dinner that Saturday night. I asked Olivia if she wanted to come along, but she said she needed more time. More time? What does that even mean? So off I went to dinner, where my parents and siblings and all their partners were excited to see me. It's always nice to feel loved, even if you feel like crap. My brother Jake was there, sharing stories about his preparations for the baby. Everyone was laughing, and I tried to be in the moment, but my mind was somewhere else. During dinner, my mom asked about Olivia, and I just shrugged it off, feeling super awkward. She could tell something was wrong, but I didn't want to get into it. Then I noticed my younger sister, Kate, whispering into her phone and sneaking glances at me. I was like, what now? Then out of nowhere, Kate said, "Hey, I saw Olivia at the new bar downtown last night." Everyone turned to look at me, and I casually asked, "Did she seem okay?" No big deal, right? Kate said Olivia was laughing and seemed to be having a good time. Of course she was. After dinner, I decided to check social media, looking for any signs of Olivia. I found a post from a friend showing photos from the bar, and there was Olivia, smiling with a group of people. She looked like she was having a blast. I texted her again, asking if she wanted to talk later, but I already knew the answer. The next day, I ran into a mutual friend at a coffee shop. He mentioned seeing Olivia at a concert the night before, clearly having fun. I was like, of course she went to a concert, but not with me. That was the last straw. I decided to confront her at the family barbecue planned for Sunday. I showed up, ready to ask her directly what was going on. As I arrived, I saw Olivia chatting with my cousin, laughing way too freely. My cousin later told me that Olivia was acting differently, more carefree than usual. During the barbecue, I couldn't take my eyes off her. After dinner, I pulled her aside, wanting to clear the air. I asked, "Why didn't you tell me about the concert?" She looked surprised and defensive, saying it was just a last-minute plan. I pointed out how she didn't want to go with me but went with others. She said it was about needing space and not wanting to be pressured. My dad stepped in, saying this wasn't the place for a serious conversation. Of course, he wanted to keep the peace. I decided to send a group message to my family later that night, explaining the situation. In the message, I mentioned how Olivia had been dismissive and not honest. I didn't intend for it to escalate, but people began replying with support for me. It felt like I had an army behind me. The next day, Olivia called, furious about the message I sent. She was like, "How could you do that?" I stood my ground, saying I was tired of being treated this way. Our argument escalated, and she ended the call abruptly. Later that week, I got a message from a friend saying Olivia was dating someone new. I was like, great, just what I needed to hear. I found out it was someone from her friend group who had also been at the concert. I shared the news with my family, who supported my decision to call her out. They were like, "You deserve better. I'm planning to focus on myself and not look back." Edit. I appreciate the support. Olivia and I have had ups and downs, but this feels like the end. There were red flags I ignored, like her reluctance to introduce me to her friends. I realize now how important it is to be with someone who is open and honest. I'm ready to move on. Am I the idiot for feeling trapped in Wales because my wife quit her degree and now wants to move back to my hometown? I went on vacation to Wales over a decade ago, met a girl, did a long-distance thing for a bit, realized there was clearly something here, and ended up moving to Wales. I got to see my family often until 2020 hit, and since then, it's been increasingly difficult between everyone's life obligations and whatnot. I moved to Wales because my now wife was finishing her degree, but she ended up quitting due to mental health issues. We had plans to start a family, but that's more or less out the window now. I've changed jobs a bit too, so work friends have kind of faded, and the friend group I had over here are all parents, so hangouts are mostly kid-oriented or seldom, and the small amount of family I do have over here are not very supportive. I don't know how else to put this without sounding like I'm a 3-year-old, but I miss my mom and dad. I miss my siblings. I get to see them for 2 weeks a year, if I'm lucky. I just dropped my parents off at the airport today, and I probably won't see them until 2026. Every time I see them, they're a little older. I know it sounds stupid, but it hurts to see. My dad is beginning to go deaf and has hearing disease. My mom is beginning to have trouble walking like her mom did. Moving away was great. I was stuck at home for so long with so little independence that I needed that. But every time I see them, I'm reminded of how much I really need them around more than a handful of days every now and again. I try conveying this to my wife, but it usually goes one of 3 ways. The first being a hug where she says nothing. The second being visible discomfort because she can't relate. Or the third being where she ends up being upset about how she took me away from my family, and I end up having to console her. My family loves her. They took her in like she was one of the family right away. But I get it. It's not her family. She never grew up with it. She didn't grow up with parents. I don't get to talk about family stuff with her because it upsets her, so things like old places I want to show her or family movies she won't participate in. She was forced into care with people who abused her. The one real family member she had, her mother's boyfriend before she died, couldn't legally do anything to help her until she was an adult, and he's getting on in age too. Plus, her mom and dad's graves are here. I've gotten to the point where I'm struggling with the loneliness, and she doesn't seem to fully comprehend it. On the flip side, I feel guilty because I made the decision to move here, knowing this would happen, so I'm pretty much solely to blame for how I feel. Any advice to help communicate better would be really helpful. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I think people are being tough on your wife. Moving to a new country is a huge change. If this is not something she agreed to do one day, I think it makes sense that she might not be ready to make the move as soon as possible. That being said, maybe you need to tell her this is really important to you and make it clear you need her to consider the possibility. Someone mentioned couples counseling, and I think that's a great idea. I understand she may have complicated feelings about family. As someone who has had my own struggles and has a partner with a tight-knit family, I doubt she doesn't understand it. I'm guessing it might bring up difficult feelings for her. It's painful to be faced with the love and support that you never received. But as your partner, she should also want what's best for you. And hopefully, she can work through these challenges in therapy. Canada is a bit chaotic. I don't know where exactly you want to move. I'm sure the situation varies from province to province, but the cost of living is high, housing is unaffordable, and healthcare is problematic. She would be lucky to find a family doctor, let alone the mental health support she needs. I would really consider this aspect of things. Consider what she needs and see if you can make a plan. Can you pay privately for therapy? Are there psychiatrists you can get her referred to? Consider what supports she is receiving and whether you are able to access these supports in the community you are planning to move to. Comment 2. Every time I see them, they are a little older. I know it sounds silly, but it hurts to see. This is not silly. Or the third possibility is where she ends up being upset about how she took me away from my family, and I end up having to console her. Do not console her. Do not let her deflect from your issues by making them about her. I don't get to talk about family matters with her because it upsets her, so things like old places I want to show her or family movies she won't participate in. This is also completely not acceptable. I feel guilty because I made the decision to move here knowing this would happen, so I'm pretty much solely to blame for how I feel. I mean, I sort of understand it, but she has no family. Why can't you both consider moving back home to where you live, particularly since your family loves her? She gets the family she never had, and you get your family back. Why is this not an option? Now for the update. I'm back with a little bit of an update. A week after my last post, I decided to reach out to my parents for a video call. I guess I just wanted to see their faces. It's tough being so far away from family. Anyway, we were catching up, and I noticed how tired they looked. Like more tired than usual. My mom casually mentioned that my dad had been forgetting things more often. It didn't sit well with me. I mean, he's always been a bit forgetful, but this seemed different. The following weekend, my wife suggested we host a family dinner for my parents' anniversary. Honestly, it was a great idea. I thought it would be nice to bring everyone together. I called my sister Kate and asked if she could come. She was super excited about it and said she would bring her boyfriend. My brother Jake confirmed he and Rachel would come too, so it was all set. I spent the week planning the meal, wanting it to be perfect. It was a lot of work, but I enjoyed it. Cooking is kind of my thing. On the day of the dinner, I was running around getting everything ready. I was super stressed, but it was all good. My wife helped by setting the table and lighting candles. She was pretty much on it, and I appreciated that. When everyone arrived, my dad looked genuinely happy, like his face lit up. We started with appetizers, and the conversation flowed easily. It felt good to be together, just catching up. Midway through dinner, Jake announced that Rachel was pregnant. OMG, everyone erupted with joy, and my mom started tearing up. Who wouldn't? After the main course, I brought out the cake. I made a joke about how I was still waiting for my turn to announce something big. Everyone laughed, but my wife shot me a look that felt off. I can't explain it. After dinner, we moved to the living room for coffee. My parents started reminiscing about their early years together. It's always fun to hear those stories. But then the mood shifted when my dad mentioned how proud he was of me. My wife suddenly excused herself, saying she needed to check on something in the kitchen. I followed her because I was curious why she seemed upset. She was on her phone, looking at something I couldn't see. I asked if everything was all right, and she snapped back that it was none of my business. I returned to my parents and siblings, trying to keep the atmosphere light. My mom asked about our plans for kids, and I quickly changed the subject to travel plans for next year. Just wanted to avoid any awkwardness, you know? My wife returned after a few minutes, looking more composed. Dinner ended, and everyone helped with the cleanup. I noticed my wife was distant, not engaging with anyone. Once the last guest left, I finally brought up what happened at dinner. She admitted she felt overshadowed by the pregnancy news. As we discussed it, she suddenly suggested we move back to my hometown. I was taken aback by her suggestion and asked why she felt that way. She explained she wanted a supportive family environment for us. Who wouldn't want that? The conversation ended with her saying she would think about it. Am I the idiot for confronting my wife about her secret meetings with my flirty coworker? I'm 26 years old, and my wife, Jasmine, is 28. My wife and I have been married for about 2 years now. Our parents introduced us, and being Muslim, we did the whole courtship thing for about 6 months before getting married. Here's the issue I'm facing. A few months ago, Jasmine came to one of my work events, and she noticed that my coworker Jane, who is 26, was clearly trying to flirt with me. Jane and I have been working together for about 4 years, and we often hang out in group settings for work-related events. Before I got married, I used to go out with Jane and other coworkers socially. Jasmine looked upset, but when we talked about it that night, she just said she feels bad and sympathizes with Jane. I found this weird, but dropped the topic, not wanting to upset Jasmine further. Over the past few weeks, Jasmine has been meeting with Jane, and it turns out that Jane has had feelings for me for years. I had no clue about Jane's feelings. I always just saw her as a coworker and friend. Jasmine found this out, and it's been really bothering her. She feels like she's somehow stolen Jane's love or something, which I don't really get. It also seems strange to me that Jane felt comfortable enough to openly share her feelings with Jasmine, and that Jasmine is so ready to be a shoulder to cry on for someone who has been trying to pursue her husband. I'm worried Jane might be manipulating Jasmine because of Jasmine's good heart, and that this could be affecting our marriage. Jasmine admitted that she's been meeting Jane behind my back and told me she feels a lot of sympathy for Jane because her own sister went through something similar, which is affecting her deeply. I'm starting to think that Jane might be trying to manipulate Jasmine because of Jasmine's good heart. I'm really worried this could affect our marriage, and I'm kind of panicking. I don't want to tell Jasmine who she can or can't hang out with, but I'm concerned that Jane is taking advantage of Jasmine's empathy and kindness. I also don't get why Jasmine's connection to her sister makes her feel this way. I think Jasmine should be more upset about Jane's behavior and the fact that she's trying to get with her husband. I love Jasmine deeply and never meant for any of this to hurt her. I want to support her, but I'm struggling with how to handle this situation. Any advice on how I should approach this without making things worse? Thanks in advance. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You seem to struggle a bit with understanding orders. I say this because your wife managed to pick out that Jane was flirting with you in front of her, but you were unaware of it for years. Further, you can't understand why Jasmine would empathize with Jane rather than resenting her. Jasmine obviously trusts you not to cheat on her. Given that, why would she be angry at or worried about Jane? Jane doesn't owe your marriage anything, and she reminds her of her sister. Not all partners are as secure as Jasmine. You voice fear about how Jane's manipulation will change your marriage. It's not clear to me what you fear. Could you give a more specific example? I wouldn't be too concerned about Jane being a master of manipulation. She has been pining after you for years. You don't read people well, and thus aren't hard to manipulate, and she hasn't gotten what she wanted out of you. You talk about making a decree that your wife can't talk to her new friend. Don't do that. You'd be an ogre, and that would impact your marriage. You and Jasmine trust each other. You're not going to cheat on your wife. I'm really confused about what the problem is. Therefore, it's my counsel that you handle the situation by doing nothing, as it warrants no corrective action. Comment 2. Put your foot down with Jasmine that Jane is off limits to her. I would very rarely say that sort of thing, but in this case, it's warranted. This is so irregular that I can't begin to speculate what Jane and Jasmine's motivations could be. I would venture to say it's quite possible that Jane is trying to manipulate Jasmine. But why in the world would Jasmine feel empathy for Jane instead of contempt? What Jane and Jasmine are doing is contemptible. That would make me question Jasmine's commitment to you. If you and Jane were meant to be together, you would have been. But you ended up with Jasmine. She is your wife, and she owes you her loyalty and commitment, not Jane. Now, for the update. I'm still trying to process everything since my last update a few weeks ago. The atmosphere at home is still really awkward, and I don't know how to fix it. Jasmine has been spending more time with Jane, sometimes just leaving the house without saying anything to me. I mean, we used to tell each other when we were going out, just common courtesy. But now, it's like she just walks out the door and expects me to be okay with it. Her phone is constantly buzzing with texts from Jane, and I can't help but feel anxious every time I see it. It's like I'm waiting for something bad to happen, and I don't even know why. I shouldn't feel this way, but I do. One evening, I was just sitting on the couch trying to watch TV and distract myself when I overheard Jasmine on the phone. She was laughing and talking in a way that felt too intimate. I don't know how else to explain it. I tried to confront her about it, but she just brushed me off, saying it was all work-related. Yeah, right. Like I believe that. I thought maybe a family dinner at my parents' house would help, so I invited Jasmine along. I was hoping it would ease some of the strain between us, but it didn't really work out that way. During dinner, the conversation turned to relationships, and Jasmine seemed so distant, barely participating. My sister, who knows about the whole situation, brought up Jane's flirtatious behavior. I could see Jasmine's face go pale. She was really uncomfortable, and honestly, it made me feel bad for bringing it up in front of my family. I didn't want to embarrass her, but this situation is just so messed up. After dinner, Jasmine snapped at me for bringing it up in front of everyone. I tried to apologize, but she just stormed out of the house. I followed her outside, and she raised her voice, accusing me of not trusting her. I felt so lost for words as I watched her drive away, leaving me just standing there in the driveway. The next day, I took a day off work to try to clear my head. I was just sitting at home, doing nothing, when one of my coworkers called. He mentioned seeing Jasmine and Jane together at a local gallery opening. Yeah, I got a little curious, so I drove over there to see for myself what was going on. I know, it probably wasn't the best idea, but I was just so fed up with everything. When I got there, I saw Jasmine and Jane standing close to each other, whispering and laughing. It was like they were in their own little world, and I was the outsider. I decided to approach them, but as I got closer, I overheard Jane talking about some personal issue she was facing. And get this, Jasmine was comforting her in a way that just felt too personal for just a friendship. I don't know how else to describe it. So I cleared my throat to get their attention, and when they turned to look at me, the surprise on their faces was something else. I tried to keep it together and asked Jasmine if we could talk privately. She agreed, but of course, Jane insisted on coming along, saying she wanted to help. I felt trapped, but I just nodded and went along with it. We found a quiet corner in the gallery where I could talk to Jasmine about my concerns. I just laid it all out there, and she defended her friendship with Jane, saying it was just emotional support and nothing romantic. I brought up how close they seemed, and it all just spiraled into a heated argument. Jasmine accused me of being controlling, and honestly, it just felt like we were putting on a show for everyone around us. I could feel the eyes of people nearby watching us, and it was just too much. So I walked away, leaving Jasmine and Jane behind. Later that week, Jasmine came home late again. This time, she seemed a little distressed. I noticed a text on her phone from Jane, hinting at needing a break from their friendship. Finally, Jasmine opened up about it. She told me that Jane is moving out of state due to family issues and needs to end their friendship to focus on herself. She said she still feels conflicted about everything and wants to seek help for her emotional turmoil. I told her I'd support her, but I made it clear that our relationship is the most important thing to me. We decided to have a heart-to-heart conversation about our future after Jasmine returns from a weekend visit to her family. I just hope things get better between us. Edit. Jasmine spent the weekend with her family, and we had a long talk when she got back. She opened up about feeling lost because of the whole situation with Jane. She admitted that seeing Jane's attention towards me made her question her self-worth, especially since she knew Jane was interested in me for years. This messed with her head a lot, and she felt bad for Jane, which is why she became close to her. She said she is trying to break away from that feeling of needing to fix everyone else. We also talked about how we can improve our communication. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.